So this is the tastiest sip that I have ever tasted, and I am just like bursting at the seams to share it with you all today. It's so nuanced, it's so delicious, and it's so profound that these words that I'm going to use to declare it today have to be so precise for it to be felt. But you know me, I'm going to do my best. And I can promise you there's a reward in here for everybody. So hang in here with me through this process, okay? Because like I already told you, you guys are masters at reality creation, but this one has eluded me pretty much the entire time until now. So let's just assume that it's magic sauce, okay? Okay, so has anybody ever felt themselves inside of the behavior of I will when I blah, blah, blah? Anybody ever done that? Oh, I'm gonna this when this happens, or I'm gonna that when this happens. It's pretty common, right? Even for me, like I would catch myself waking up in the morning and being like, yeah, I can't wait for that thing, you know, or this, like, I'll decide on that when I blah, blah, blah. Like, it was like my whole day was like erasing itself on this future moment before I even started the day, right? And as you know, I've been looking into these core wounds so astutely that for me, all the core wounds are showing themselves through the lens of my wound, which is self-denial, right? And so I was like looking at this energy, this force field between me and this desire. And I was like, this is denial plugged into time and space. It's like denial plugged into time and space, right? So the past like week, I've been walking around with this gap in front of me, you know? It's like, why is this gap here? Like, what is this gap and why do I have it? Okay. It felt like I was pushing my future away, and I was looking at the gap that I was making, thinking that that's where prompting happened. Okay. It's very hard to see it, but it's a very common thing. And I have this book called The Undefended Self about path work. That's like helping me see some of the human constructs of coping with our core wounds, right? I'm using it as a reference for my work, and I'm using it as reference for my book. And not that this helped illuminate this experience for me. This experience illuminated itself because I'm making love to denial right now. I'm saying, hey, I see you. Like, what have you been up to? Like, how have you been like dancing with me? Like, show me your style. Like, I'm like in love with my denial right now because it's where all of my clues and my greatest gifts are going to be unlocked from, right? So much so denial is like, oh, get to know my friend Sabotage. My friend Sabotage is just very much like me, but different in the following ways. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, nice to meet you, Sabotage, right? So me and denial, we're like bedfellows right now, okay? But my denier was putting that gap there on purpose. And of course, the gap was there so my denial protective ego could insert a projection from my past. It was like the gap was waiting for me to put an assumption that I have carried from my past into the blank, right? And so when it comes to reality creation, if there's a prompt in reality, which I teach all the time, reality is waiting for us to prompt it with our desire so it can fulfill it, right? If there's a prompt that is conditional on a story from the past, we will always be creating a distorted future. Always, always. I was plugging desires in there with the gap, with the core wound in the way, right? So it was like, oh, I desire to da, da, da. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to put this gap, this protective gap in here with the condition of your core wound that's going to allow for you to pull from your past and put a protective measure in between you and that which you desire, right? So my prompt was conditional and dependent on my core wound to decide what to populate it, what jargon it wants to populate from my past in there, right? It also felt like everything in my life was just around the corner, right? It was like tomorrow or next week or like a month from now, 2 weeks from now, a year from now, right? I was always interacting with myself just around the corner, right? Everything was just around the corner, right? This is why I said at the start of the class, I will when I blah, blah, blah. That's the clue. That's the clue. That's the, hey, maybe you have a gap in here, okay? There was a constant waiting for the other shoe to drop in a way. And there was never really a now moment. It was always like a coming moment. And I was living in the coming moment that could never come because it can't, right? In the Pathwork book, it says a child forms a certain wrong conclusion about life, which sinks into the unconscious and literally molds the life of the adults, right? And this is what we're all doing when we're carrying these wrong conclusions that have been imprinted in our core wounds from childhood. Now, what's so miraculous is I went on this really beautiful journey. And in the beautiful journey, I decided to consciously erase the future. I said it out loud. It was a declaration. It was like, I cease to interact with you. I cease to have anything to do with you. I just am discarding my relationship with you entirely as an experiment. It came after I had done a very childlike, reactive insight where I said I was going to lay on the carpet and not move until I had the piece of information that I was looking for. And my protest was incredible. You know, I was there for a long time until I was like, as a creator of my reality, this is a really dumb way to hold reality, you know, at gunpoint. Let's just say I was holding reality at gunpoint. Give me what I want. If you don't give me what I want, I'm going to stay here and do absolutely nothing. And it was like somehow my childlike self was deciding, okay, well, that's how you're going to get what you want, right? So in another kind of version of it, I was like, I'm going to completely disassociate from the future. I don't need anything to do with it, right? Super hyper reactive, right? And yet, my defiance showed me that the gap actually can disappear. And when it does, you merge with the state of vibration that you actually can be and are meant to be as expressing in real time as the creator. And it's kind of an either or. Either I'm conditionally standing inside of the experience of reality with this gap here, dissociating from the present moment and dissociating from the command portal, which is now, in an assumption that there's some other time to send my attention towards, and that's where I want to be. It's not. When you close the gap, you collapse the gap, and you get into real time creation, you merge with where reality is actually decided from. And I'm going to explain to you how. And it's really incredible once you see it. You kind of can't unsee it. So this is going to be fun. More fun than I could possibly describe, okay? So imagine a baby at birth, right? It's a wide open system, free flowing in its breath, in an undefended responsiveness to the world. There is no separate self there. I've described this before. A baby is just completely in observer creation mode simultaneously, right? There's no mask happening for the baby, as there's no reason for the mask to exist. There is nothing yet decided that it needs to be protected from, right? This is what core wound work is all about. It's about collapsing the mask so you can know yourself in real time as the creator of miracles. Now, this is really funny because miracle energy for me was probably the biggest clue to showing me about this mask protective gap that I was participating in as the highest expression of my core wound of denial, right? And it's been stalking me for a long time because I've been addicted to miracles, right? I love the vibration of the miraculous. And how funny is it how accurate the face of miracles is for this denial core wound? Because the denial core wound would say, oh, a miracle is a needed reaction to loss. A miracle is a needed reaction to lack. A miracle is a needed response to plug in whatever it is that you desire, right? The only way that we need it to look like a miracle is if we have the gap in place, because the real-time creator point of view is always miraculous. It's in a constant state of knowing itself as the miracle. And when we know ourselves as the miracle and we don't have the gap, we are walking into a future that is an absolute response to what it is that we are deciding ourselves to be in the now. Is everybody with me so far? Don't worry, I'm going to cut this apart 10,000 other ways so that we can get in here from all the wiggly tendrils that exist around it, okay? So in my case, I was trying to keep myself separate from the future in an ultimate act of denial and separation, right? Probably because I wasn't brave enough to hold the entire experience of reality creation, right? It's a little insane to think whatever it is that I am saying into my reality now will absolutely be defined in whatever comes next. It's a lot of responsibility, right? It's an insane amount of responsibility. And I talk about it at length, like we're creators of our reality, blah, blah, blah. But there was still this gap that allowed me to say, and it's undecided, right? And it's going to be what it is going to be. And it might not have anything to do with me unless I'm thinking about it, right? There's all these like ands in there, right? And when you're always looking 2 steps ahead, you're also trying to insert the past inside that gap because the past is what you know. And then you'll be in this feeling of like, oh, I guess I know a little bit about what's coming because I can insert this assumption from my past in here. And then that makes the future feel more safe because I can assume it's going to look like it did before, right? So when the gap exists, you're creating this like insulating bubble on your experience. So you can be like, well, I'll kind of know what's coming. Like there's a little bit of awareness about it. I don't have to face that it's, in a sense, could appear like absolute mind-boggling uncertainty. And it could also absolutely appear as certainty as decided by what I'm choosing to express in the current moment. That's a mind bender, but remember, paradoxes are normal in our experience. So I was perpetually asking, why isn't it happening? Why hasn't happened yet? When is it going to be? When am I going to get to say this? When am I going to get to do that? When? It was always a big when. time was the projected divide between myself and everything that I ever wanted. It was a later thing, something not now, right? And that's a comfortable place to be. Insert the past, something that's not now. Don't need to stress about what kind of energy or expression I'm being because, well, it's going to be whatever it is that it's going to be, right? Whoa. It happens so frequently for me. I even taught about when I proclaimed that we need to plug in the desires into reality in order for them to be fulfilled, right? This is still true, except they are not a desire. They are you in real time. So I would used to maybe say, I desire to travel to Maui in the next 3 months, right? There's kind of like a laissez-faire, like, let me just float it out there and just kind of like send it around with this gap in between, and it'll like decide itself when it wants to decide itself, right? When you are in the real time of that, it's I am a person who is going to Maui in 3 months, and there's no discussion about it. There's no wondering about it. There's no, it'll decide itself when it decide itself. It's not a, I will, when I, that. It's a declaration. I am a person who I absolutely understand that is decided for, right? And it's so nuanced in the difference there. I desire this. I'm going to send it on out, right, with the floating cloud. And I'm going to let that be filled in by some maybes or some I don't knows, right? No, there's zero tolerances in reality creation for that, right? When we are looking at the core wounds, we are aiding ourselves to be able to collapse ourselves into the now. Because the core wound is the gap creator. As I'm going to share more about this path work and about the masks and about the core wounds and how we create these false protections, as long as we have them around, they're still driving the reality creation. There's a conditional core wound that's the glass ceiling between you and everything you've ever wanted. But when you have the ability to see the gap that you're creating and collapse it, and you recapture that everything that is yet to be will be decided in this current moment by my understanding of who I am in relation to its creation, you've collapsed into the now, and the future is absolute, right? When we're asking, why isn't it happening? We're just kicking it down the road in order to be able to insert the past so that we can feel the false comfort of the assumption of something that we've already seen, right? We're recreating the past in the present by predetermining the future in the template of the past, which technically doesn't exist, right? So this is where I think there's so much beauty. There's so much beauty. An infinite creator God is non-conditional. We know that. I talk about it at length. Unconditional, whatever it is that we desire in the free will. And the stories love to come along in order for us to feel the assumption that we have some foresight, right? Foresight is like an enemy. Having foresight is like the opposite of the law of assumption, which we're going to talk about in a minute, because the law of assumption is in the assumption that you don't need no foresight. It will be what it is that you declare it to be and nothing else, right? So the desire to like drag along this past and plug it into this gap between us and our future is the core self-abandonment. It is the core self-denial, because we are saying only this one way that I have already seen can be, instead of infinite ways that it can be better. Imagine how much we're suffocating in the distortion of who we really are when we're saying, okay, past, you decide what's next. Okay, past, tell me what's going to be. Okay, past, give me the protection that I need. Okay, past, go ahead and influence it to be whatever that you want. We are suffocating our true nature and what it is that we came here to do. I heard on a talk today by one of my really good friends, Lovejoy, he said that in essence, we come to Earth to withhold unconditional love from ourselves so that we can actually witness ourselves experiencing becoming the source of unconditional love, right? Seeing ourselves literally be the source of it. And the only way that we can see ourselves as the source of it is if we believe for a short time that we're not, right? And the same goes for reality creation. In order for us to see how beautiful we are in this playground imaginarium, we literally need to pretend that we're not, so that we can witness ourselves as the source of the creation of heaven, right? And when you kind of see it, you can kind of make love to how beautiful that is. As insane as it is to think that struggle is necessary in order to be reunited with this concept, it is. And yet we are only going to truly understand our greatness if we accept the suffering that was necessary to see us the scale of what we really are, because it's that big, right? It's that big. There is no future that needs to insert into the prompt, because this future is an expression of what you are now. If you are, thank you, Anya, I love you. If you are in doubt now, the future will look doubtful. If you are in lack now, the future will look lacking. If you are in anger now, the future will look angry, right? For a reason. That anger is going to be speaking to you through the chaos of the angry future that you create. Is that you? Is that you, Paul? Is that you, Mariko? Is that you, Kristen? Is that you, Sharon? Is it? Is it? Is this you? Is this an expression of you? Is this an expression of you, of who you are? You're gonna keep getting angry at it until you go, I've been letting myself be that version of myself in the assumption that it was going to protect me from something this whole time. The present is the moment of, I see you, whomever you are, I see me, and my future is, and the blank that we've been associating with is where the future is looking at you saying, who the hell am I? It's whatever you decide, present person, and you're the only thing that exists. We are essentially merging with the law of assumption, right? I've been acting in the law of assumption where I can have the gap in place and I can say, oh, I'll just send it out there and it'll be whatever it is. When you merge with the law of assumption, I can say, I am generous, and everything necessary for me to be an expression of that generosity will have to exist in the next moment, simply because it's a reflection of exactly who I am, right? So it's not like the law of assumption, I'll be generous when. I have to be generous now. And the way that I really saw this to the fullness of its majesty is I have a situation that's undecided right now. It's completely uncertain. Like it is so many degrees from zero awareness of how it's going to play out, like literally zero, right? And I started wailing in gratitude at the miracle as though it was happening right now. It didn't happen. The miracle, well, one could perceive from the time contingent perspective, it didn't happen yet, as there's no signs to show itself. But I'm showing myself. I'm showing myself as the person with which the miracle has already been delivered to. And I'll be elated in its recognition. Now I'm saying this from a big version. I've been playing in the middle size versions, the micro size versions, the 10 minutes from now versions, the 2 days from now versions, the 20 days from now versions. It is an energetic embodiment of knowing unlike any other. It's unquestionable in my being at this point, because the version of myself that had the gap in place is absurd. It is absurd. Absurd. We are ingrained so much in the reactive, right? And the reason why we have this reactive kind of behavior is because children think in both absolutes and generalities, okay? Generalities is how we react to our future, and we roll kind of where we're going right into that generalization, okay? So an absolute is, if this happens, then that will happen. Absolute, right? And children kind of pick that up and plug that into their reality because they were hurt the first time. That's enough. An absolute will be created, right? That's it. Hurt the first time. There's a rule in my reality and I now see it, and it will exist until I choose otherwise, right? A generalization is when we plug in something like X always happens. So hypergeneralization, right? These are literally the gap creators. These are literally the expression collapsers, right? Because it's a contingency on our future that is holding the I am expression that we are right now hostage. It's saying no to us even contemplating that which we are right now because we're too busy in the absolute or inside the generalization. We're somewhere else, but we ain't here when we're doing that action and that behavior, right? What did I write here? A higher self is absolute in a sense, but mostly in the expression of the law of assumption as I am, so I will see. And this is where it gets real sexy. I was going to say this to the end, but I'm going to do it now because I get to make the rules in my reality. I was in the uncertainty, right? I was in the uncertainty and I was like making love to it in a sense. I was like, I see you, uncertainty. You are like real. And it's true. Like, let's just attune to that for a minute here. Like, let's allow uncertainty to come and hang out. It's real. We can't say anything is absolute except who we are. into the next 10 seconds, right? Or 20 seconds or 30 seconds. So I was like welcoming uncertainty to come and be with me. I was like, ooh, all right, you can get crazy in how dark and voidful you are, uncertainty, truth of all creation. And then I was kind of playing in the energy back and forth of uncertainty washing over me and telling me who I am, the I am that I am, pushing forward into that uncertainty and telling it who it is. And I was like going back and forth on different stretches of that from basically this second into infinity, right? And backwards too. I was letting uncertainty erase me to such an extent that I was like, wow, I'm a complete uncertainty if I allow myself to get overtaken by thoughts about the future and things that have more power than me deciding who and what I am, right? And I know that because everybody here knows I let myself get washed into non-duality, and I already erased myself once before, right? So I was playing with this uncertainty versus I am declaration. And this is what happens. I found the miracle vibration in a completely different costume. The costume of the miracle is I see. When we state that we see futures that could be because of who we are, we kind of invite them to give us a sneak peek to an extent. And so I was playing with the declaration of I see, and I saw so much beauty. And that I see statement became my new relationship to the miracle, because instead of chaos and then resolution, it was a how good can this be based on how I see myself right now? Here's some possible futures. And it's magnificent because you in that moment are looking in the miracle, in the mirror, in the miracle. That's really funny that was a kind of a slip there. You're looking in the miracle, you're looking in the miracle and seeing all the futures that could exist as a reflection of what it is that you are declaring that you are in this moment. And it's so beautiful because there's billions upon billions upon billions of options that wanted to be allowed to be when you were getting into the present moment, instead of putting that gap in between ourselves and plugging the past in there to basically destroy all these really awesome options from even having a chance of existing. It was being decided by the past, influencing the whole dang prompt, and nowhere were we to be found in that process because it was the assumptive past and it was the absolutes and the generalizations that were creating the future all in themselves. We weren't anywhere to be found in that process. We were in the future making up a story based on the past. We were everywhere but here, right? And so the beauty of standing in the I see is acknowledging who we are so beautifully, so deeply, so profoundly, that the futures that could be as a result of that knowing want to come and dance with us and say, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe it's going to be this, maybe it's this, maybe, 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 maybe. It's magnificent to watch. And, you know, I wouldn't get lost for too long in the ICs because it is a future dance again, but it's a future dance of a different vibration. It's a future dance of a different variety. It's a future dance that's just exciting you to be more declarative in your I am expression, right? and don't let it be anything else. And there's another kind of clue as to why we get lost in this gap prompting state. And, being that I'm here mining my core wound of denial, I can see how I was consistently doing it, right? I was creating the chaos. And the reason why I was creating the chaos is because I was addicted to seeing the projection of the miracle later. I had a belief in order for something to be miraculous later, I had to let the chaos ride right now to prove me in its resolution, right? This is kind of something that's been coming up lately. I kind of did a circle around back to reading Existential Kink, where it's like we have these like desires for chaos and calamity, and it's basically our mask saying, I would love to have a party in lack. I would love to have, and we get, it's kinky to our subconscious to like create those things. And we like let them control the whole experience until, of course, what I decided is that I won't sacrifice my true self to falsely protect myself. I refuse. I refuse. And I know that because I've been doing a little bit of that play where I would see the uncertainty and do any of the human things that the core wound wants to do. Feel sorry for myself, feel enraged, feel reactive, blah, blah, blah. And when I was like feeling those feelings, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I feel dumb right now. I feel dumb being angry. I feel dumb being reactive. Like, I felt so ridiculous in the short stints that I was doing it. I was like, this is not me. I'd come out of it moments later and I'd be laughing at how beautiful life is and how magnificent, my current experiences, regardless of the uncertainty, like regardless of the uncertainty. I realized that I was literally sacrificing my true self in some false protection. And the act got so like obscene to me. I was like, this is not me. I cannot be this false protective self. I just can't be it. So when this story of the future that doesn't exist came forward into clarity for me, I really saw how it was a perpetual and consistent betrayal of myself. The truth looked clear as crystal. I was betraying myself as the creator of my reality, and I was literally kicking her down the road into this future state. That was me doing it, right? God, AKA all of us, right? And it's this core addiction to cause and effect that we have been creating, or at least I can say I have been creating all of reality from, which is a completely false perception, right? And if anything, our projection is the cause and the effect, so we can feel the satisfaction of this self-fulfilling prophecy, which is I'm self-fulfilling the prophecy because I'm plugging the past into this gap that isn't real, right? And I feel like for me, this clue is so delicious in its deliverance through me because it's essentially the act of self-denial in perpetuity, right? Like repeated self-denial over and over again into a gap in the belief that there's a future that is undecided by me. It's disgusting in a sense. And so when we merge with the majesty of being in a constant declaration, self-declaration. When you merge so immaculately into real time and understand reality is an expression of your constant state of declaration of who you are and what will be, we define the future. That's how it really happens. Not with a gap in the way, not with a story plugged in, not with a self-denial or any of the sorts. It is the constant declaration of who you are. I am the certainty, even though what I am seeing looks like uncertainty. It's tricky. Me and who I am is the certainty despite a perception of uncertainty. Now, when you kind of get into this state for long enough, the perception of the uncertainty is kind of absurd. This is like, okay, yeah, it's uncertain from one vantage point, but it is as certain as I am to knowing what I am. Great. That means I am responsible for the certainty of uncertainty. To some people, this will not compute, but I see it sinking in. This is the initiation and the perpetuation of the law of assumption. It's not to pretend to believe in the law of assumption and act in panic of something else. This is the embodiment of it. When we dissolve the false acts of protection, we end abandonment and we become the collaborative creators of our desire. So much so that we can no longer even desire it, as it's already yours. To believe that you need protection is to believe that there is something that you need to protect yourself from. That is a declaration that something is more powerful than you. Why would you protect yourself from that which you create? Because it is literally a reflection of who you are, period. That's all I have to say about that. It feels like a mouthful, and it also feels like the most simplest fact in reality that could ever exist. I'd love to kind of like massage it out a little bit more if you guys have questions, reflections, examples. But I know I just slammed you with like the mother lode of nuance in the mother lode of word salad. And yet I told you it was my commitment to give it to you distilled and directly as in the best of my ability. And I hope that's what I've done. So, are there any questions? Ooh, I like Kelly's comment. It's like a yes and paradox of humanness. I mean, there's some nuance about that humanness because the humanness, how do I describe this? Like for me, humanness is wrapped up in my story of denial because part of the reason why my core wound of denial came about was because I came to a place where I felt like an alien and was told I needed to be like a human. And I went along with that for a long time, you know? And when I'm being victimized, when I'm letting myself, when I'm choosing to be victimized by my life in the assumption that I know about what's going to be in its future. I'm literally telling myself a story that my humanness is helpful to me when my humanness is trying to remind me who the fuck I really am, which is insanely powerful as a creator of my reality. And so it's like we have to discard one story in order to make the space to receive the truth about ourselves. And the truth about ourselves is the immensity of our power. And to me, that's why I keep kind of saying love making, because I told you, I've got like so much unknown, that I could be relating to right now. And all the humanness could come and take me over and tell me stories and plug in projections and try and do protections and have reactions and feel emotions. And all that humanness could come and decide to have reaction in my reality right now. And what would that actually accomplish? All I know is the future that I would be in fear of would now be coming forward into the present and making a hot mess of me enjoying the eternal now. That's a fact, right? So that humanness is so like seducing. So seducing. Ooh, do this act, plug in this story, make that gap, like decide that this is going to be what everything you need to be afraid of. And it's like, wow, this is where I'm telling you, I feel abandonment and sabotage and denial and all the other core wounds are just coming in to slash apart our enjoyment of this current moment, which could be our very last moment for all we know. How dare we let all that non-existent stuff come and devour our existence? How dare we? This is where I believe the core wound is born from. It's born from this rejection of the miracle that we are in this exact moment, undecided about our future. Like that to me makes me sad to fathom is a normal state of being for so many. Like they may never actually get to experience the miracle of truly coming home into the present moment with themselves and knowing how powerful they are. Wow, that like crushes me in a sense. And yet I also trust in its beauty because my story of denial is what gave me this gift of liberation I have today. And it's like that has been the pulse that has been pushing me through the capacity to see all of this is when I was, playing in anger or fury of uncertainty, right? I was like, you can't take my freedom. How dare you? How dare you try to steal from me the freedom that I've already found? I won't give it to you. I won't give it to you, anger. I won't give it to you, lack. Like, forget about it. Don't come and try and collect my freedom from me. Ooh. And I know that because I was at the park with my friend yesterday and they were trying to, rationalize and console my experience with me. I'm really grateful because I have epic friends. And, I was playing in it for a little while because, existential kink is like, well, maybe if I go through feeling the darkness and the lack and the separation, I'll have an insight. And I was like, that's stealing my freedom from me. And I had a few other people kind of quizzing me on my belief. Well, the world's a dangerous place. Well, you got to protect yourself. Well. And it all just sounded like nonsense to me. I was like, if you say so for you, but you can't say so for me, and I will not sacrifice my freedom to believe otherwise. I will not. And this is my declaration of the I am that I am today. And my capacity to be in this moment in itself has to be more satisfying than any story of certainty I might tell myself about what I need to do or not do. Like, have at it. Try. Go and try me. Try and take me. Try and get me to sacrifice the freedom I feel now about a story that may or may not change my future later. I won't believe it. And that's why it seems really like arrogant to be teaching about something that has yet to be proven in my reality, right? But it's proven because of the experience I'm having right now. This depth of liberation is more satisfaction than anybody could truly understand unless they come here, right? And so it's like, dance with proof and see how satisfying it will, how much satisfaction it will give you. It will be fleeting, won't it? Because you'll be looking for the next proof and the next proof and the next proof and the next proof and the next proof. And you will be a hungry ghost walking into that gap in the future, gap in the future, gap into the future, gap in the future. Come here now. Get here. Have it. Claim it. Own it. Be it. See what happens. It is gonna be good. I can promise you that. Well, that's all I have to say about that. Does anybody else